if that sounds good.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Alrighty, so we are at 7 o'clock. So I guess we can get started up. Great.
Alrighty. Yeah, I guess I'll get it going here then.
Good.
So first of all, just a big thank you for everyone for coming out to the first true PharmaFit seminar. We're super excited to get the club going, and we're happy that you guys chose to take part in the beginnings of PharmaFit. We definitely have a lot of work to do to get the club where we want it to be, but we know we have the opportunity to create something special here in the faculty by the time that we leave. So again, thank you guys so much, and it'll be a great opportunity to learn something new in our discussion with Dr. Little, and get some practical tips from us as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, Vinay, you want to give him a shout out?
Yeah, so first just want to give a special thanks to Dr. Rodriguez. As you can see here, it really wouldn't be possible actually without him. We went to him back in September, and he's been nothing but supportive for our ideas and really helped PharmaFit get off the ground. So we just want to give a huge sincere shout out to Dr. Rodriguez and all his help and continued support. So thank you so much. Okay.
I'm definitely going to announce this in the class when I come here next week about
Perfect.
how great it has been working with you, all of you guys to get this off the ground.
100%. Yeah.
Thank you
So much.
Yeah. So just to give you guys some insights on what's going to happen in today's session. So we're going to start off with Q&A with Dr. Little. We have questions lined up to just ask him about his research and other interests. And the second part, we'll be talking about how you can fit fitness into your busy life schedule as a pharmacy student. So we'll get right into the Q&A sessions.
Yeah, just another quick couple shout outs to a few other clubs around UBC that are have been really supportive of us and that we plan to collaborate with in the future. So the first one is Pharmally. So it's a student helping students club that runs a student mentorship program, as well as they have other resources, opportunities, and events to learn from and engage with more experienced students. They have a forum event coming up for pharmacy students to learn more about their upcoming practicums from fellow students. So definitely head over to their social media to check out a little bit more. They're a really great club, and they've been super supportive of us. So shout out to them. Those guys are awesome. Yeah,
and also just a shout out to UBC Power Building as well. They're a really great club. They're an awesome club, a really great group of guys. They're based out of here at UBC, and they're planning on doing a lot of group workouts and specific sessions as well. We're kind of looking forward to collaborating with them in the future. Specifically, they have been collaborating with Supplement King and other companies in the Lower Mainland. And specifically, they've been getting supplements at cost. So often, sometimes with Body Energy Nutrition here on campus is quite pricey, but they have been working with a lot of different places to get supplements, just really cheap actually than what they usually are. So if you're looking for any supplements or your supplement needs, you can just contact UBC Power Building, and all the VPs and are a super great group of guys who are really enthusiastic about fitness, just like we are. So in the future, we plan to do a lot more events with them, especially when it comes to in-person meetups at the gym and those kind of things. But if you have any supplements on your mind that you want to save some money on, you can definitely contact them, and they're a really great group of guys. And yeah, that's great. So we'll just go on to the next slide here. So Sai,
yeah, sure. Yeah. So now to introduce our guest today, we have Dr. Jonathan Little. Dr. Little is a researcher and associate professor at UBC Okanagan School of Health and Exercise Sciences. His research is focused on understanding how metabolic disruptions that characterize type 2 diabetes affect cellular inflammation, and how different exercise and nutritional strategies can be used to reduce inflammation and improve overall cardiometabolic health. He also has an athletic background as a competitive distance runner, so he is definitely well into fitness as well. Dr. Little, thank you so much for taking your time to come here and share your knowledge, and please hop on the mic and let me know if I missed anything important in your bio or got anything wrong, okay?
No, yeah, that was great, and thank you very much. It's great to be here, and just say I love pharmacists, so I love anybody who wants to healthcare providers who want to learn more about lifestyle and exercise in particular. So I think it's just great that you have this group of pharmacy students that are interested in this topic, and And again, I say I love pharmacists also because my research, we maybe won't talk about it too much today, but we just finished a large clinical trial where community pharmacists were leading patients with type 2 diabetes through a nutrition program to try to get the patients off their medications and their diabetes into remission. And we're working on implementing that and pushing that work forward. So I work very closely with pharmacists and BC Pharmacy Association right now in some of that work. So glad to be here, and I'll let you guys ask the questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the first question we wanted to ask you was like, what initially got you interested in the field of study that you're researching right now?
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of a roundabout story. So as you guys introduced, I was a competitive distance runner. So I ran cross country and middle distance track in my undergrad at McMaster, and I ran in my master's, and I ran in my PhD. So I probably have the record for the most years of Canadian university running because of different injuries and half years and things that I ran. I think I ran competitively in 7 or 8 years when you're only supposed to have 5 years of eligibility. So, but I was a distance runner, and don't judge me, but I went to undergrad kinesiology wanting to be a chiropractor. I loved anatomy and how the body, muscles and joints and bones and that. And then it was in a second year exercise physiology class, actually. And I can remember the lecturer learning about producing ATP and mitochondria and these metabolic pathways. And I was just like, this is the coolest stuff ever. Like, I just loved it. And I remember going to practice that night and saying to the guys on the team, I just found out what I want to do. I have to be an exercise physiologist. Forget this chiropractic stuff. So I fell in love with exercise physiology, mitochondria, and just understanding how the body worked. So then I did an undergraduate summer research project, which I'm sure many of you might have the opportunity to do something like that, a USRA. I did an honors project where I got involved in research, and then a master's and a PhD, and kind of never looked back. And I still feel like I'm just a grown-up student now still. But how I got interested in type 2 diabetes was a little bit roundabout. So I was studying how short bursts of high intensity exercise, we call that HIIT, or high intensity interval training. We were studying how that impacted your mitochondria. And at the time, this was a little bit counterintuitive or new, because we thought that HIIT would be, I'll put in quotation marks, anaerobic exercise. So it wouldn't affect your aerobic system. And the prof I was working with was one of the first to show that little bursts of anaerobic exercise actually target your mitochondria and can make your muscle mitochondria grow bigger and stronger. So we were studying that. And at the same time in the field, a whole bunch of research was coming out to say that in people with type 2 diabetes, in their muscles, they have poorly functioning mitochondria, or mitochondria that aren't good at handling energy and producing energy. So we kind of we weren't that smart. We put 2 and 2 together. We said, well, we're studying this exercise that boosts your mitochondria, and people with type 2 diabetes could use a boost in their mitochondria. Let's test it out. So we did the first high intensity interval training study in people with type 2 diabetes. And since then, I've fell in love with all things type 2 diabetes and understanding it. So that's kind of how I got into exercise physiology, and then how into type 2 diabetes.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that response. Yeah, we'll here, let's just go on to the next one. So yeah, so our next question, Dr. Little, was basically what your thoughts are on intermittent fasting specifically, because I know you do work with type 2 diabetes and a lot of research, and recently intermittent fasting has gained a lot of traction. I know with researchers like Dr. Jason Fung back on the East Coast, he seems to be really adamant about intermittent fasting and its benefits to do with insulin sensitivity, and now he's even preaching it for weight loss. He's even gone so far to say, about the tenet of calories in, calories out is not so important as much as, doing this type of eating regimen of intermittent fasting. So I just kind of wanted to see, based on your research and what you've been doing with type 2 diabetics, if you have any thoughts on intermittent fasting and what you think of it as a strategy for people maybe who even aren't type 2 diabetic, just in general.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, maybe I'll just clarify, I guess, how I view some terminology in this field. So I think intermittent fasting encompasses a lot of different things. And I think most people, when they're thinking about intermittent fasting, are probably more thinking about time restricted eating, right? So extending the fasting window, maybe some people will call it 16-8, right? You fast for 16 hours and you have an 8-hour eating window. You could have 24, so 20-hour fast, 4-hour eating window, versus intermittent fasting in the literature, or the scientific literature, is often approaches like 5 and 2. So 5 days of normal eating, 2 days of fasting, or every other day you eat normal one day or eat whatever you want one day, and then you fast for the whole other day. So I think it encompasses a lot of different things. And as a scientist, those probably all have different metabolic effects, right? But I think the big one that probably you're getting at there, that people without type 2 diabetes might be interested in, or at least from my interpretation, is the time restricted eating, that 16-8. So as an example, you don't eat breakfast and then you eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. as an example, and whether that has any benefit. So there are lots of animal data to suggest that time restricted feeding in animals, I guess, and intermittent fasting could be beneficial. I think we have to be a bit careful in translating a study in mice with fasting to humans, because if you fast a mouse for 20 or 24 hours, that's a really stressful event for that mouse. And I don't know how we can extrapolate that to humans directly. And the human data, so randomized control trials, are just starting to come out on the time restricted eating or the intermittent fasting. So if I were to, think like a scientist, I would say the jury's still a little bit out whether someone without type 2 diabetes or who's insulin sensitive will benefit from time restricted eating. But there are some signs in the literature. So I think let's talk a little bit about maybe the research, and then a little bit about just pragmatics and thinking about it. So one thing that looks like is true from the literature of when people eat and what they eat is that if you shorten your eating window, say between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., the types of food that people eat after 6 p.m. are typically not healthy, good foods, right? So there's studies out there to say that that's when people eat ice cream and desserts and that sort of thing. So if you follow that, eating window and stop eating after 6, you might have benefits to your health just because you don't eat as much junk food, right? Because people are probably not eating, carrot sticks and egg whites at 9 p.m. at night or something like that. Although we have done an egg white study as a pre-sleep meal for people with type 2 diabetes, and it will lower their fasting glucose. But overall, I think that could be where it might be beneficial. And then anything that will, if you're overweight or you could benefit from reducing your energy intake, anything that restricts calories is potentially going to be beneficial. Right. So again, that's why a lot of restrictive diets will work in the short term. A low carb diet works for people for weight loss because it kind of is a way to reduce your calories. Maybe there's some other benefits, maybe there's not. But if you do a low fat diet, if you do a no bread diet, if you do a no fruit diet, whatever it might be, they're going to restrict something and lower your energy intake, and they'll work at least for a little bit in the short term. So time restricted eating might just be a nice trick to say, hey, I normally pack in 3,200 calories when I eat from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. Well, now if I follow the rules where I can only eat between 10 and 6, I just have less eating opportunities and eat less. So I think it's a bit of both there, of you don't eat, if you follow the rules, you don't eat junk food, I'll call it, and then maybe reduced eating opportunities. So that's kind of the practical side. Now, from the research side, it does look like there might be something to the time restricted eating for improving things like blood pressure and beta cell function and insulin sensitivity. Even in studies where we really control exactly what people eat. So if you control everything and they eat the same amount of calories just in a shortened window in the day, that 8-hour eating window, there does look like there might be some benefits to, again, I think in the literature, beta cell function, blood pressure, and insulin sensitivity are perhaps the top 3. So maybe that's beneficial for lots of people, right? The only other thing I'll say, because this is PharmaFit of exercise people, is you got to remember what your goals are, right? So a study just recently came out that combined time-restricted eating with resistance training, strength training. And yes, the time-restricted eating, the people lost more fat, but they gained less muscle, right? Which makes sense. You're not optimizing your muscle growth potential if you're, shortening this window and eating less overall food. So it depends on your goals. If you're someone who has obesity and type 2 diabetes, then, reducing eating opportunities and whatever trick or strategy you want to do is going to be beneficial. But if you're trying to maximize your exercise performance or your muscle gains, then maybe that approach isn't the best. So does that kind of answer your question, or?
100%. Yeah, no, and that's a really good point you made about how the jury's still out, essentially. I mean, I've had people come up to me saying that it's a wonder and they've lost a lot of weight and they can keep the weight off. But other people say that after I finish my fast, I want to eat everything in sight, and then it's actually counterproductive. And then likewise, of course, we know that having constant protein feeds helps you in that anabolic capacity for building muscle. And then, of course, one would say if you're fasting for 16 hours, are you optimizing your muscle anabolism? And like you said, the answer probably isn't. So yeah, that definitely is, in a sense that I feel like when it comes down to it, if someone could adhere to it and feel like they feel great and energetic with it, especially if they have a busy schedule, if they're running to work, they don't have time to make breakfast, and I guess it could really help with your just life and how things work. But if not, if you're really hungry all the time, then maybe it isn't. So I think that's exactly how I look at it as well. And I think when people want to do it, it really matters about if it fits their lifestyle. So yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Little. That was a great answer. Great. The next one here. Oh, Sai, I think you muted, buddy. You good?
Sorry,
No,
there we go. Okay, so yeah, the next question that we had here is, as a cardiometabolic researcher, if you had to choose one, or I guess even several, what would be the most important biochemical / physiological marker that you would classify as most indicative of like a physically fit individual?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a good think about this to try to think about as a researcher what I would measure, and then maybe what would be practical for someone who doesn't have specialized equipment. So I have two answers that are research, and then I have one that I'll throw out there, and I can throw it in the chat that might allow you to make one of these measurements without having fancy equipment. All right, so that's my my caveat to this. So the one that I think I would measure as an exercise physiologist, physiological marker of fitness would be your VO2 max or your VO2 peak. We sometimes call that cardiorespiratory fitness. And that's the test that we do in the lab. You're breathing through a mouthpiece, you're breathing room air, but we're collecting your expired gases, right? And then based on your ventilation, how much air you're moving every minute, and how much oxygen you're extracting from what's in the room air to what you breathe out, we can calculate your oxygen uptake or your volume of oxygen uptake. And the reason why that's a good marker of fitness is because it's an integrative measure of how your lungs, your heart, and your skeletal muscles and your mitochondria are all working together to be able to extract oxygen from the environment in order to produce ATP to fuel that work that you're doing. So the test starts easy, you're breathing, and then it gets harder and harder and harder, and you go until you can't go anymore. So you've probably seen NHL hockey players doing the test at the combine or something like that. So we do that test in the lab, and we often use it as a primary outcome measure in exercise trials. So if you're doing, if you were studying type 2 diabetes, your typical primary outcome measure is hemoglobin A1C, right? If you're studying cardiovascular disease, you might use blood pressure. Well, if we were doing an exercise study, we often use VO2 peak as the primary outcome measure. But it's obviously not very practical for most people because they don't have an exercise physiology lab like me to be able to measure that. But the reason why it's also good is that the epidemiological data says that it's one of the best predictors of morbidity and mortality, right? So again, these numbers might not mean anything to you, but for every 1 MET increase in VO2 peak, which is about 3.5 mils per kg per minute, you've got about a 15% lower chance of dying, and specifically of cardiovascular disease. So that's why we think it's important that there's a researcher named Stephen Blair at the Cooper Institute, very famous researcher. He's done a whole ton of these longitudinal studies, and that's where you might have heard fitness trumps fatness, or it's okay to be fit and fat. And again, I don't want to use that term derogatory, so these are not my slogans, but they've done that research where they show that VO2 peak is better predictor of morbidity, mortality than BMI. And then someone who has a high BMI but a high fitness is actually less likely to die or healthier than someone who has a low BMI but low fitness. So that's why I think that marker is the best. I'll look it up here when I have a second. The next question, a colleague of mine named Ulrich Wisloff in Norway has come up with a predictor of your VO2 max, which is crazily accurate. You wouldn't think it would be, but you put in your resting heart rate, the amount of physical activity you do, your age, sex, a few other characteristics that we all could do. And we've done this in the lab, just messing around, because we measure our VO2 peak regularly, and we plug it into Ulrich's predictor, and we're within like 2 or 3% all the time. So I think if you don't have access to a physiology lab, it's a really good predictor. So something you could use. So that's what I think the best is. If we didn't talk about fitness and it was more metabolism, then I think an oral glucose tolerance test or a mixed meal tolerance test with insulin measured as well would be probably the best marker of your metabolic health. That would tell you how good are you at dealing with a load of glucose, and how good does your insulin work and your beta cell work. We can figure that all out from an OGTT or a meal tolerance test with repeat blood samples and insulin and glucose measures. Again, that's only really possible in a lab where you can put an IV catheter in and take blood samples, although there are new point of care devices and techniques coming out to measure, well, glucose we obviously know, right, with finger pricks, but there's techniques coming out to measure insulin with point of care blood finger pricks, even saliva measurements that might be coming on. So that would be something that someone might be able to do themselves in the not too distant future. So
perfect. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was about as good of an answer I could have hoped for. That was great. Definitely schooled me. I definitely learned a lot there, so it's pretty awesome. And also inspired me to up my cardio game a little bit too. So
all right, and I'll look, I'll find that. Sorry, I need like 2 minutes to find that predictor. I know the keywords, but and I can put it in the chat or send it to you guys to send out to everybody to be able to predict your VO2 peak.
No worries.
That would be amazing.
Thank you so much. Perfect. Yeah. We can definitely send it out to our followers for that. It's a really interesting tool.
Yeah, so our next question, we just wanted to ask, since you are a competitive distance runner, but also a researcher in health sciences and athletic performance, we were wondering if you were able to use your research to improve your performance as a competitive runner.
Yeah, so I'm certainly not a competitive distance runner anymore. I'm a recreational jogger and a wannabe tennis player right now. That's what my fitness routine is. But I think definitely. So I mentioned high intensity interval training, and we were studying how these short bursts of exercise could improve your aerobic fitness or your mitochondria. I think probably track athletes or distance runners have known that for many years, because we do interval training, right? Or track training or fartlek training. But certainly I think my knowledge there, at least it helped me feel good about improving my aerobic fitness if we did short intervals. So I definitely had a few coaches who subscribed to that. And I think I like being a scientist and studying exercise physiology, but I also don't like it when I'm thinking about my own training programs, because there's an art to coaching and to training too, right? And I think that's where the real skill in a in a running coach or any coach comes with combining the science and the art. And I'm a little bit too much on the science side. So I actually prefer to have someone else come up with my training program instead of trying to make my own, so that I can just show up and they tell me what to do. But certainly that the idea that HIIT can improve your aerobic fitness was embedded into my thoughts towards training for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. And I guess, so this kind of leads into my next question, and this perfectly fits in. So based on the recommendation for exercise and weight loss, since you do a lot of research with HIIT cardio, and as you said, you have a lot of background with it, often in the bodybuilding and weightlifting community, it's kind of understood that, okay, let's say an individual wants to prepare for a show and lose a vast amount of body weight. They would do like low intensity, steady state cardio or list cardio in order to put yourself in that calorie deficit, while also making sure that you optimize muscle recovery and don't break down excess muscle by being in a really vast calorie deficit. But as of late, there's been a lot of traction with HIIT cardio. I can't tell you how many workouts on TikTok I see of people saying, try this HIIT workout, it's the best, you're gonna, lose weight like this. But in the past, I did a kinesiology course where they spoke about the real benefits of HIIT cardio, and they generally say that you get the most benefit from it if you're already physically fit. And I was just wondering if you agree with that, and if someone's coming to you, let's say from a beginner standpoint, and approaching you and saying, should I do HIIT cardio? What would you generally respond to this in terms of weight loss?
Yeah. So I guess maybe the first one, I don't think HIIT is only for people that are already fit. And a good example of that is when we do a study of HIIT in people with type 2 diabetes, for example, a brisk walking pace for them is 90 or 95% of their VO2 peak or their maximum. So by definition, if they want to do brisk walking, they have to do HIIT because they need to take a break after a minute or so. And we've seen that within 2 weeks, you can get some really good gains in people with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes doing HIIT style workouts. So that would be the first thing. That being said, I don't think HIIT is the magic bullet for weight loss, like TikTok or what you might see out there. And really, you nailed it when you said you need to be if you want to lose weight or lose fat, you need to be in a caloric deficit, right? And so it becomes a trade-off. You can burn more calories per minute at a vigorous intensity, but you get tired or you get fatigued, right? So HIIT is maybe a little bit of a trick to get the calorie burn rate up, but you get a little break so that maybe in 20 minutes, you can burn more calories than you would in a 20-minute jog or walk, right? So I think where HIIT comes in there is just in maybe the efficiency and the ability to not be too fatigued with that, particularly, when someone's cutting or in a calorie deficit, it's hard to then go for a 20-minute hard run, right? Yeah. Maybe because you don't feel very good, right? But maybe HIIT could come into play if you don't have time there. But I still think that the best for weight loss or fat loss in that instance would be the low intensity steady state. And another, line of research evidence I would point to for that would be 2. So in the good meta-analyses that compare HIIT to traditional cardio or moderate intensity continuous training, if you match the volume to the calories burned, there's no difference in fat loss there, right? So that's meta-analysis from randomized controlled trial evidence. There's no magic of HIIT there if you match the calories. And the second one I would say is from the National Weight Control Registry. So I don't know if anyone knows about this. This is a study that's been ongoing in the United States. And they recruit individuals who've lost substantial amount of weight. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but let's say it's like at least 15 pounds, 15 or 20 pounds. And then they track those individuals to see what predicts who maintains the weight loss or who regains the weight. And one of the biggest predictors of who maintains the weight loss is the people that do at least 90 minutes of walking a day. So low intensity, steady state type of walking, right, is one of the behaviors that seems to predict maintenance of weight loss. So again, to me, that suggests that that's a good approach for that if your goal is fat loss. But maybe it's good to point out here, right, that exercise on its own is not a very good weight loss strategy, right? And there's lots of studies on that for various reasons. I mean, you can do the math. I do this in my third year exercise metabolism course. We figure out the calculations for how long it takes to burn off the calories or the fat or the carbs in different foods based on metabolic equations, right? And you can blow a 90-minute steady state walk with one donut, right? That's the amount of calories that's in there. So from thinking through the metabolic equations, you can understand that. And then the research suggests that too, that exercise on its own is not a great weight loss tool, again, because of the metabolic cost. And then also potentially in the real world compensatory behaviors, right? So you eat more or your appetite changes. So weight loss strategies for the real world or when you're not in that cutting phase as a bodybuilder, they're primarily diet, and then exercise helps with the maintenance of weight loss. So I don't think you can exercise your way to too much weight loss without dietary changes.
Exactly. Yeah. As usually people say, no workout can really beat a bad diet at the end of the day, just because of how easy it is to offset, like you said, an hour and a half of walking with just, that one donut and Tim Hortons that looks really too good to pass up. Right. So then that's really the difference there. So yeah, no, thank you so much, Dr. Little. That definitely answered my question. So perfect. I guess, yeah, so I mean, that's finished from us, our questions, but we just want to pose to you guys. Is there any questions you have specifically for Dr. Little based on the information he's presented? Feel free to put in the chat or turn on your mics.
There actually was a question earlier about the intermittent fasting. One person asked if you could discuss if there were like any different populations that intermittent fasting has been done in the past, because you said most of the studies are done in mice, but I think this person is wondering whether it has been done in humans.
Yeah, so if we're talking intermittent fasting, like every other day or 5-2, so that the approaches that I would call IF, certainly there's been weight loss studies, so individuals with overweight and obesity, and those studies, and again, there's even meta-analyses. It doesn't work any better than constant calorie restriction, but it's no worse, right? So you could do 5-2 or every other day. The weight loss, again, based on the studies over 12 weeks, 6 months, are the same as just restricting your calories by 500 calories a day. Whether, I think then it becomes individual, whether some people find restricting 500 calories a day every day, or eating one day, not eating another, easier to do. I would say there that the research evidence suggests that there's a high dropout rate, as you might imagine, in the first couple of weeks of intermittent fasting intervention. So if you do a randomized control trial in weight loss or diet, you usually account for 15 or 20% of people will drop out over the course of 12 to 24 weeks, right? Just because life happens, they don't like the diet, whatever. In the intermittent fasting studies, they lose 20 to 30% in the first week or two. So people are just like, I thought I could do this, I can't, and they drop out, right? So you already have kind of a biased sample there. Yeah. So I would say intermittent fasting, overweight and obesity. There are a few studies using different intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating in type 2 diabetes. Again, some effects, but it doesn't seem to be anything better than just regular caloric restriction. And I guess pre-diabetes, there's been 1 or 2 studies as well. So again, I think it's early days for the clinical trial evidence, but again, that doesn't mean that it won't work for somebody, in the real world, or there won't be anecdotes of it working. But in terms of clinical trials on it, those would be the populations where there's some evidence, but I don't think anything that says it's magic at this stage.
Perfect.
Thank you. We just have a hand up. Adam, if you just want to unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Little. Thanks for coming out today and sharing your passion for all of this. It's really nice to hear your take on things. I'm curious. I have a question in regards to Ramadan. I know it's a big celebration for many Muslims across the world, and celebrations coming up in the next month. And this is a time where you have people fasting, no water, no food for from sunrise to sunset for 30 days, right? So it's kind of like a, I guess, more aggressive approach to intermittent fasting, I guess we could say. Curious as to your take on if you've come across any literature or based on your, I guess, clinical judgment, how does this affect the body in terms of weight loss, fat loss, I guess general health? Like, is there any literature to suggest that this is healthy for people to partake in versus, I guess, having other benefits? If you could just speak on that.
Yeah, no, a great question. And I'm not an expert in this, but very timely. I've got a new PhD student from Iran, and we are doing a Ramadan study coming up. So we've got a pilot study coming up next month where we'll put continuous glucose monitors to measure glucose control. And he wants to look at different exercise strategies to mitigate the negative effects of Ramadan. So the literature seems to suggest that actually it's not beneficial for cardiometabolic health for most people. There's studies on this, perhaps two reasons. Compensation. So you fast for the whole day, then the food that you eat late at night there isn't necessarily the healthiest, or maybe you're saying, hey, I did this all day, so then you eat extra. The other thing that might be related to the time restricted eating and fasting literature is it seems to be better to do early TRE. So that means you have your eating window earlier in the day versus having it later in the day. And that's probably related to your circadian rhythm. You're a bit better at handling nutrients. Your insulin sensitivity, for example, is higher in the morning than it is in the evening. So if you fast all day, you're eating now, which is not aligned with your circadian rhythm. Plus, when you fast and skip breakfast and lunch, you have a high rate of lipolysis, right? Because your body's in fat burning mode. That high rate of lipolysis is actually dumping those fatty acids to the liver and making the liver insulin resistant and increases gluconeogenesis. So then now when you eat, you get this bigger spike in blood sugar. And actually that's been shown not related to Ramadan, just in studies where they do skip breakfast, skip lunch, you get a bigger spike in glucose when then you eat. So I think all that together, it looks like the literature suggests that Ramadan actually may not be beneficial for cardiometabolic health. And maybe it's related to the type of food you eat, the circadian misalignment, if you want to call it that, or this concept of late TRE not being effective. So give us 2 years, Adam, and we'll let you know what the glucose control results are, and then whether different exercise strategies, the student wants to test different types of exercise during the day to see if it can mitigate any negative effects.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to post 2 years. Hopefully we can see the results of that. Really interesting. Thanks.
Great question.
Great. I think we have another question here as well. The first one is there any reported difference in how exercising in the morning versus at night affects weight loss?
Yeah, a good question. Also a bit of a hot topic right now. You probably see news articles coming out about this. My initial thought is that it probably doesn't matter as much as just doing the exercise itself. So if in the real world, it's probably, there's never a bad time to exercise. If you are committed to exercise and it's, you're going to stick to it no matter what, then that's where maybe the timing of exercise may tweak the response a little bit, right? So I would say it's like exercise is a sledgehammer, and then the time of day you exercise might be like a pinprick, tweaking the response a little bit. And really the literature here is too mixed to make much sense of it. So it's kind of like research on on eating eggs, right? You'll see one paper come out and say eggs are good, then eggs are bad. Eggs are bad for heart disease. Eggs are good for heart disease. The morning versus afternoon exercise is similar. There'll be a study that'll come out and say afternoon exercise didn't improve glucose control in people with type 2 diabetes, but morning exercise did. And then there'll be a study a year later comes out and says morning exercise was better for weight loss than afternoon exercise. And so I don't think I can really say anything there. I would say the best time to exercise is when you're going to do it consistently. So don't worry too much about trying to do it at a certain time of the day. Sorry if that is not the answer you were looking for.
Yeah, perfect. No, I definitely agree as well that often that's a really good analogy you made with the sledgehammer, sledgehammer and then the pinprick. Essentially, that individuals often get too pedantic with the way they look at exercise, and am I doing it this small way or that kind of thing. And I think that leads into the next question about, would you say that the adaptive qualities of physiology to HIIT or even caloric restriction? So I think what this question is asking is that as you increase your energy expenditure, are you kind of therefore taking in more calories and offsetting that decrease in calories in which you did? So what Dr. Jason Fung was saying too is that, why he was kind of saying calories in, calories out is not the best is because he's saying, let's say I'm cutting in a deficit of 300, 400 calories, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis or NEAT subsequently accounts for that decrease in caloric intake, and then you become, less active, your energy expenditure out subsequently decreases, therefore offsetting the calories that you didn't consume. So do you think that there's an adaptive response to maybe to, workouts like HIIT or these caloric restrictions in general?
Yeah, great question. I think there is. We just hired here a new Canada research chair, and she's an expert in appetite regulation, the physiology, the psychology, and the behavior around that, because it's obviously complex, right? You could look at what's the compensation in metabolic rate when you do exercise and that, but that might not tell you how someone actually eats or behaves in the real world, right? And then you could also do studies, and we've done a few of these studies, but others have done them probably better than us, where you do a bout of HIIT and then you give someone a buffet meal, right? And you see if they compensate by eating more or not. But that might not be that real, because people don't all have a buffet meal in a lab all the time, right? They walk by Tim Hortons and go, oh, I kind of want that. And they don't think about those things, right? So it's complex, but I do think some of that's going on. And that's probably why one of the reasons why exercise on its own is not a great weight loss tool, because it's not clear, it's not super clear, or there's not a perfect equation, but overall, over time, on average, you do compensate a little bit. And I think there was a big study that came out that tried to quantify this recently. Again, I could pull up with a couple minutes, I could find the reference. John Speakman was the senior author, but they kind of said, I think for every 100 calories you burn, you only get credit for about 75 of those, if that makes sense. So you burn 100 and you adjust 25 of them, so you only get kind of 75% credit for that. And these are big doubly labeled water energy balance studies that show that. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think that was generally all the questions we had from our followers. So based on that, we just want to extend a sincere thank you, first of all, just for taking the time to speak with us today and answering all our questions. Mark and Syed, you guys have anything to add as well before we?
Oh no, just I really wanted to say thank you for taking your time to come out and give us more insights on exercise science. It was just really insightful. I learned a lot today. Yeah, Sai?
Yeah, just obviously thanks to Dr. Little for being, such a great guest and able to answer all of our questions in such good detail. And thanks to Dr. Rodriguez also for getting us such a great guest to come on for our first session. So yeah, it was awesome. Thank you.
Well, it was lots of fun, guys. And I'll stick around if you keep going, and I'll look up those references to put them in the chat for you guys.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Little, you guys are welcome to stay over for a second section. It's just going to be a quick, just strategies on how to actually fit fitness into our busy schedule as a pharmacy student. So we'll get right into that actually right now. Yeah, so Vinay, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so just the second segment, this should be a little bit quicker, just kind of talking about little strategies as a pharmacy student, or just in general as a student, how to fit in fitness in your daily lifestyle, and little tips and tricks that we've kind of found along our way in our academic careers that have helped us, fit in the time to go work out, even if the time doesn't seem to be there. So let's kind of jump into it. So common dilemmas. Often I hear people say, oh, I would work out more, but I don't have the time. That's the biggest one of all time, especially when it comes to like exercise adherence and somebody starting to work out for the first time. I hear this one probably the most. And the second one is I start a new plan to exercise, but I always get thrown off by my busy schedule, so I can't really see it through. So I mean, what's the point, right? And then the third one is that often people think that by working out, it's just time away from studying. So they're not being productive in their academic endeavors. So that's a big one. And then also someone says, a lot of people say as well, and even myself, I've been guilty of this, saying, I only have half the time. If I can only, have half the time to work out, why should I even, bother? Another one is, especially in the months of January and February, if the gym gets very packed, so if it's so packed, I never get to do the exercise I need to do. So what's the point? So we're just going to address some of these. Each me, Mark, and Sari are going to take different stabs at these and give our 2 cents about how we approach these dilemmas and what we've learned from just our fitness journey. So we'll get into it.
Yeah, so sorry. The first strategy that I personally used and that I think it can be useful to a lot of other people for helping you, adhere to your exercise like regimen, or just kind of stay on top of like exercising in general, is adding time to exercise to your calendar and planner. So having it on your schedule will help you plan the rest of your time better. You won't kind of run into the situations often where you're like, oh, today I wanted to work out, but I didn't end up having time. Because if it's already on your schedule, you're a lot more likely to just be like thinking about it when you get up in the morning or whatever, like, oh, I'm going to have to do this after class. So yeah, I like to use my calendar to like work it in when I'm least busy. So, I have my calendar either on my phone or like a physical calendar, whatever, where I'll just look at the days where I know I actually have an opportunity to work out or whatever, and I'm not kind of overloading my days unnecessarily, basically. It also kind of serves as a reminder and becomes part of your routine, just like with everything else that you do. It's going to remind you to do it, because I feel like if you get really busy, it can be easy to just to not even think about it really, and just kind of forget about what's going on, that you had a plan to work out that day. My last like kind of tip in this regard is just to do what is practical for you, because the ability to be consistent is kind of what is most important. You have to like make the schedule work for you, basically, as opposed to the other way around. Like, you shouldn't be working for your exercise schedule. You want it to be something that like fits into your lifestyle and the way that you want to do things. And so you don't have to, there's no one right way of like doing fitness, doing exercise. So whatever way you manage to consistently fit in time to exercise is really like the best thing for you to do. So that's all I have for that one.
So strategy number 2, you guys probably have seen me do this a lot, but I actually just come to school sometimes if I am not in an IA or have to dress professionally. I just come in my gym outfit that works with my casual outfit as well. So I just come in, and then which saves me a lot of time from like changing into stuff and then getting out of it. And then I can just jump right into the gym, do my workout. And if that's not the case, like today I had to wear something professional for my IA sessions, then I usually just have a bag that I usually keep full of my like gym supplies and shorts and t-shirts and whatnot. So I can just easily grab it in the morning. Very easy. And it's just like something that you don't have to worry about. And lastly, this is also something that I usually do. You guys have probably seen this too, but I wear my Nike Air Force Ones. They're just flat bottom shoes. The other brands like Vans, Converses, you've probably seen a lot of people wear them in the gym because they're actually very stable shoes to exercise in, but they're also just great shoes to just wear every day as well. So if you just come to school in that, you don't have to bring a second pair of shoes, which, you know, sometimes you have trouble fitting into your backpack and whatnot. So that's just another tip that I can give you guys in order to fit fitness into your schedule.
Yeah, perfect. And just to add on that, like especially if you want to be doing like squats and deadlifts and stuff, often like just wearing your Vans and Converses are just a great option because they have that flat bottom, you know. So yeah, 100%. Thanks, Mark. And the last one today is essentially increasing your productivity when you come back after, you know, going to the gym essentially. So I guess what I'll first start off by saying is that you're more energized and ready to tackle your work right after you work out. And it's important to understand that productive hours are essentially different than total hours. They're two different things. Essentially, if I've been sitting in the same position for 5 hours straight, and I think I have to keep studying, by removing myself from the situation, doing something active and coming back to that same situation, you're able to attack what you need to do with more vigor and just more motivation. So often when it comes down to that, it really is based on you just getting some time away from sitting at your desk. So that's what I really find is the biggest thing. And also kind of similar to second point here is that time working out is not time wasted. Often individuals say, you know, if I'm not studying, then maybe I might be wasting time. But by that definition is, you know, is it a waste of time to brush your teeth? Most people hopefully would say no. And the reason we say that is because we look at brushing your teeth as an important marker for our health and something that's needed for our health. We start looking at physical fitness, something that's needed for our health, just like brushing your teeth. It stops becoming a burden on you and stops becoming something that, you know, you think you maybe sometimes don't need to do. So it's important to really categorize that fitness is a part of everyone's lifestyle, and it should be. You shouldn't look at it as something else that's taking you away from what you need to do. Also, it's important to understand that it helps your mental well-being as well. There's been studies that have shown that a moderate pace walking schedule for individuals who have been deemed as being depressive or have depression, they've shown equal efficacy or equal benefit from walking as they did with antidepressants. So that goes to show you that exercise can really help in a lot of different mental factors, and whether if you're not feeling the best or if you're stressed because of exams, actually going for a walk will alleviate all those symptoms, will make you feel better than just sitting in the same spot and telling yourself you need to keep getting it done because you feel like you have to. So just want to throw that out there. And also kind of based on that other dilemma about, you know, I only have half the time, what's the point of me even going? You have to understand also that, you know, 2 productive sets, and I would argue this, are better than 4 medium intensity kind of sets. So if you only have half the time, therefore you can only do half the sets, make sure that what you're doing is with great intensity and great focus. If you do that, you'll get more benefit than doing something double the amount of time, because, you know, really quality is better than quantity, especially like when it comes to training volume 2. Having that intensity really offsets that lack of volume. So it's really important to make sure that, let's say you only have half the time, it happens to everybody, but just make sure that, you know, with the time you're given, make the most of it. It's not, don't have an all or nothing attitude, because if you have an all or nothing attitude, you're really never going to get in the gym in the first place. And what Dr. Little said also in one of the questions he addressed is that the biggest marker for going to the gym is not, you know, for example, like the time of day you do it or how you do it or what pre-workout meal you have. It's just getting in there and making sure you find the time to do it. That's number one thing, because just consistency really trumps everything else. So I just thought I'd throw it out there. So that's it from our little segment, a little short one, just to kind of prime you guys and show you what general things we're going to be talking about. But is there any other questions from you guys specifically about this content, or?
If there are no advices, Dr. Little, do you have any final comments before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. Both your all your comments there and your little tips and tricks were great. I think the other one with time, that's where the high intensity interval training stuff can come in, and I use that sometimes, right? If I've only got what's an example? I'm picking up my daughter from piano class. I've planned a workout. I brought my stuff, but work ran late and now I've only got 12 minutes left. Instead of being like, well, it's useless to do any exercise, it's only 12 minutes, I'll go into 8 by 30-second running intervals in that 12 minutes. And I'll know from research that I'm going to get a aerobic and all the other benefits, mental health, that sort of thing from doing that. So I think that's another one you can use too, that little bursts of exercise can benefit. It doesn't need to be a full-on best workout you've ever done.
Yeah, totally. That totally makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah, great. So if there is not any other questions, then I believe that is the end of our slides. So we sincerely first want to thank everyone for just coming out today. We know it's been busy last couple of weeks, and wherever you are joining us, we really appreciate you taking a time out of our day to come to our very first session. This is going to be the first of many and for years to come. And it's an important milestone for all of us that, we got our first session started and getting going. It's been something that's been in the works for a while. And me, Mark, and Sai are just so appreciative of everyone who came out. And we can't thank you enough. And once again, thank you so much, Dr. Little, for being a part of our very first PharmaFit session. So thank you so much.